Hello and welcome to Chat DPS. Whilst Robert has left these shores to take a well-earned break today, I am joined by security guru and all-round CISO extraordinaire, Adam Cunningham. This week has been an interesting one as we're hearing all about this so-called largest data breach as Alibaba mop up in China, following a breach reported to have harvested over 4 billion records. Not a small thing. We'll talk about a new statutory tort for invasions of privacy and take a look at the latest supply chain incident involving Coinbase. And finally, there'll be AICD have launched a great paper to assist company directors. So welcome, Adam, and welcome to Chat DPS.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. I don't know about the security guru part, but I'll do my best today.
Lap it up, my friend. So, Adam, to this week we are starting off with this statutory tort for serious invasions of privacy. It's a practical law, commercial, brought together or brought to our attention rather, by Rebecca Brown via LinkedIn. It's a subscription-only website. I guess so you'd have to go hunting pretty hard to get this. So it's a new tort for serious invasions of privacy, and it will come into effect under the Privacy Act on the 10th of June, and it gives individuals a right to take action for serious intrusions into their seclusion or serious misuses of their information. Conduct must be intentional or reckless. Now, it's kind of hard to believe which one's which, right? But defined. This is as defined by criminal standard. In order for the tort to be made out, making it difficult and costly to establish, especially for ordinary individuals. The variable and individualized nature of privacy claims and the tort's mandatory elements of intention and recklessness make the prospects of class actions arising from the new tort less likely. Instead, it's expected that this tort is more likely to be alleged for high profile or egregious interferences with privacy. Imagine kind of like a News of the World phone tapping scandal, that kind of thing here in Australia. So despite its narrow scope and potentially limited utility, the tort is a timely reminder for organizations to review and update their privacy policies, ensure employees are aware of their obligations in relation to individual privacy, and refresh internal data handling practices to minimize the potential for liability. I think, Adam, it's kind of an interesting thing. This is sort of like we're getting more clarity around what the Privacy Act is actually here to do for us now, right? And this is very much giving us a very clear indication in terms of how this is being interpreted at that level. Is that correct?
100%. It's about protecting groups as opposed to individuals. So if you think about the class actions that are out at the moment on like Latitude and some other financial places, this just allows those type of class actions to be filed and lodged in a much easier fashion, and it leaves it so that most people will be able to get together and then start something like this, whereas before it would have had to have been either high profile people that got hit with it and or businesses that got hit with it to be able to get to the class action point.
Right. So, I mean, one of the things that I was thinking around this was I mean, corporates have got to get a laser focus on something, and their laser focus currently is around network security. Does this actually give them a purpose around moving more towards data protection as well, or is it just, well, more of the same?
No, 100%. I think one of the biggest things that this will help, just from a legislative perspective, is to be able to give a company a business outcome when it comes to data protection, and then start to think about, instead of thinking about the old idea of borders, like Roman cities were built, right, with each wall being harder to get into, it's more about what's actually important and where do you put it and who has access to it. And that type of change in thinking is starting to happen within the industry, and then this will help that to be taken on board by larger corporates to protect our data.
Right. Okay. So we'll move on quickly This is an interesting story that's come in. Criminals have bribed an outsourced contractor to steal Coinbase's user data. This was on Bitdefender on the 4th of June. Cryptocurrency exchange Coinbase has stated that an internal data breach affecting nearly 70,000 users involved bribed contractors from India. So another supply chain event. This one has been rather nasty, and it's got a rather nasty twist, and it's quite suggestive. So the crypto exchange confirmed that a coordinated bribery scheme had been directed at its overseas customer support team, leading to a leak of personal and financial data. The company said it reported the breach to police and launched a $20 million reward fund to get information on the attackers. The compromised staff allegedly accessed internal systems and exfiltrated personal data belonging to 69,461 customers. The data included full names, addresses, telephone numbers, and email addresses, masked social security numbers, and partial bank details. Images of government issued IDs, such as passports and driver's licenses, account details, including balances and transaction history, and limited internal corporate records. I think importantly in this particular case, login credentials and two-factor authentication codes and private wallet keys were not affected, according to Coinbase, but they would say that, wouldn't they? Whoa, this is taking scamming to a whole new level, yeah.
This is huge. There was a really interesting point on this. So the people that coordinated the bribery scam and got the data actually tried to hold them to ransom for $20 million. And what Coinbase did, thinking outside the box in something that I've never seen before, is they put a $20 million reward fund on information for the attackers. So instead of paying the attackers 20 million to silence the data, they thought we'll put the 20 million up for people to tell them who stole from
Here's a
them so that
mirror.
they can get arrested. Yeah, it really, really interesting change of pace on what happens, and kind of shining light on the world that there's ways around paying the ransom and getting an outcome. We'll see in the future if this works really well for them or not. But yeah, really, really interesting. The good point is Coinbase being one of the largest of any of the exchanges out there right now. The fact that two-factor authentication codes, private wallets weren't affected by this is really, really good. If users get emails saying that they're cycling through encryption and they'll get new codes and whatnot, then it might show that something else has happened. But I'm willing to take them on face value that that stuff wasn't done, especially considering it was customer support that was breached in this way.
Yeah, I
But
think that
it's a wake up call.
it is a wake up call, yeah. And what would be really interesting to understand from Coinbase's perspective is whether this was actually part of a play that had actually mapped out beforehand, as part of a sort of like a cyber incident plan, or whether it was
Yep.
just something that was on the fly. But it sounds as if it must have been planned, right?
It does sound like that this was a scenario that they looked at from a third party perspective. It's interesting for us here in Australia because you look at it from the perspective of like contract labor in Australia, outsourcing in Australia is at an all time high at the moment. So understanding the information and the access that you're giving out and what the risk of that is quite big, and I think will be something that boards will start talking about over the next 6 to 12 months, especially with the changes to the privacy law that we were speaking about before. And these type of attacks only highlight that more.
Yeah, interesting one. So I'm sure there's going to be more about that in the coming weeks, and we'll be following that one with interest. But
Absolutely.
for now, how directors can stay ahead of robust data compliance conditions. The AICD, the Australian Institute of Company Directors website, on the 1st of June, attributed to, and this one's actually attributed to a guy called Jamie Norton. So the opening gambit for this is that directors who approach data merely as a compliance issue do so at their own peril, is what Jamie Norton has actually said. And he also suggested that with effective governance, Data moves from being a headache to a strategic asset with significant earning potential. The article continues, primarily directors need to oversee that their organizations implement strong data governance policies aligned with the Privacy Act of 1988 and the associated 13 privacy principles. The AICD has released data governance foundations for boards, key principles for director oversight, and value creation. The paper was developed jointly with Melbourne Business School's Centre for Business Analytics and law firm Allens. Now, then I'm just going to read off. There are 5 principles that they're working to here, right? So there's organizational data is a strategic asset. Principle 2 is that define clear data governance accountability. Principle 3 is the data lifecycle and effective risk management. And 4 is empower a data-driven organizational culture. And 5, respond effectively to a data incident. So all pieces of sensible advice. There's some real detail that lies underneath those, which I'm sure you're going to discuss. But we have spoken before about scenario planning, but this goes much deeper, yeah?
Yeah, completely. So this basically comes to the idea of changing a company's idea of what data is from a thing that you have to an asset that you own, and then the principles will look quite logical for people that have gone through the same principles of owning an asset. So it's exactly the same way, right? So you've got your strategic asset, whether it's a building or data in this case, clear governance and accountability as to what you're going to do, where it's going, and who's responsible. And then your life cycle, how long are you going to have it for? What's your plan when it goes away? And then you've got empowered data driven organizational culture. This one is a lot of businesses that I have advised over the years. A lot of the time in the boardroom, there's a lot of feeling. This feels like the right direction. This feels like something that's going to hurt us. This feels like this and that. What the AICD is now trying to do is trying to put through the old saying of just the facts. So now it says the data shows us this happens when this happens, and then how do you effectively respond to whatever that happens to be? So these principles are very logical and very founded in any other type of asset. So it's a really great place to start for most directors.
And I think, again, Adam, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is really pointing people towards the nirvana of actually protecting data rather than just the network. It's
Hundred
consistent, right?
percent. Yep,
Yeah,
hundred
it's just
percent.
consistent.
It's instead of looking at your devices, it's looking at your data. So the device that can touch the data is important, but it's more important where the data is and what happens with the data,
So it's
because
more
everything else
important
can come
first.
around from that. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And this is a fantastic top-down approach.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Well, that was Chat DPS for this week. Adam, absolute pleasure having you aboard and looking forward to catching up with you again in the not too distant future. I think we'll be doing this again next week. So there's a few more things to discuss. Hope you've enjoyed
Yep.
joining us. Thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thanks for having me.